Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
Good morning, everyone. It is Wednesday, May 22nd, 2024. My name is John Pieranunzi, and this is the opening swing. Let's begin today, as we always do, with our news. Last night, we got the Great British Inflation Rate, their CPI. It came in cooler year over year, but slightly hotter month over month. Europe is slightly down as of now, less than 1% again. We also had some ECB speakers. That was pretty much what we got out of Europe. Coming into the US hours, we had our MBA mortgage applications at 7. We also have Goolsby speaking at 9 a.m. or 9:40, just after the bell. Then existing home sales at 10. Regional Fed survey and our petroleum status report at 10:30, which will be important if you trade crude oil or any of the energy complex. Then we have two auctions, a 4-month and a 20-year auction, and then our FOMC minutes at 2 p.m. So that's what we're getting today. It's a little bit more interesting than earlier this week, hopefully. We'll skip the higher time frame charts because not much has changed. We're not getting too far away from the prior week's high, which is also our all-time high, and we've been able to really just kind of squeeze higher in this range. On the daily, I was talking about this high, our all-time high, the 49s, and this low, the 05 3/4, kind of bounding the bounds of our range, and how we were kind of getting a, building a profile in here, building an MC profile. Our the May VPOC, the VPOC of May, has shifted higher to right around the 35. So right in that area that we were talking about, pretty clearly seen right here. This is now the VPOC for the month of May. So that area becomes even more important to me. What are we seeing in here? Just like I said, we made our high. It was our all-time high. We pulled back, and this is where the buyers showed back up, and we've been just squeezing higher in this range. We did actually take the all-time high last night just after the bell by one tick, by just a single tick. The all-time high was 49. Now it's 49.25. So we were able to get that high just barely. So what does that say to me? To me, that says that we're accepting prices in this area. The price action is a little bit more balanced than, price discovery higher, meaning we're not breaking this range, pulling back, holding it, and continuing. We're just kind of stretching it higher. And so that's kind of what's happening. We are vulnerable, in my opinion, to a pullback, but we're also vulnerable to just continue drift higher. And there's a little bit less edge, in my opinion, to which we might get, which is just a function of how these markets trade in this environment, which is all-time highs, summer trading, slightly lighter news flow. Those are all the things that, in my opinion, short-term traders rely on. We rely on volatility, rely on price discovery happening, and some traders rely on news. And so when none of those things are happening, it becomes a more difficult environment, and you have to be aware of that and adjust your expectations. But anyway, so the keys to be aware of on this chart, just like I said, here's our high, here's our low. We have been able to successfully push the high, and this is our MCV pocket of this area. So what I'm curious to see is, does this MCV pocket, does it resolve as support, and any tests into it find buyers ahead of yesterday's low, and we keep sort of just kind of melting higher? Does that happen, or do we fall below this MCV pocket and it is resistance from above, and we actually push to test this low, which would be, that's a little bit less likely because we've already tested the high, but still definitely in the cards, considering that this is a balanced range and a little bit more ambiguous price action, in my opinion. Or third thing, do we just hang out around this MCV POC and essentially do nothing for most of the session? But we'll discuss that on some smaller time frame charts. Let's continue to those. Okay, here we are on our 4x5 PNF chart, the chart that I like to look at structure with. And like I said, some key things we're looking at this chart. This area, which I've been talking about, is now our MCV POC area. The 29s to 34s, it's 34 quarter is our VPOC. So for me, kind of the first possibility I'm looking for is, does this area become support? Are we unable to get to it, and do we go higher? Below here, we're looking at this. This is yesterday's low, our MCV POC, and also prior week's VPOC area. This is an area that I would expect to be tested if we fall through this area. And if we fall through, I would expect to push through initially on this area and potentially reversion higher. Otherwise, if we fall to this area and we don't go, and we're unable to find support, the next area down is the 12 halves to the 15s, which again would be an area that I expect to see push through, potentially get to the 5 3/4, maybe not. But again, this would be another area where I would expect to see a push through and then potential support. So these three areas are MCV POC, yesterday's low, and the 15s. They're all areas on this chart that I'm aware of as potential areas to be tested and then find support. Likewise, they could also be areas that are tested, fail, and just continue on to the next area down. We'll go into more of that, but I'm just kind of emphasizing these are the areas that I'm really looking at today. Also, what I want to mention, some of you may have noticed it if you're into order flow, but I've noticed a lot of activity like around the 35s and then also around the 45s. What I'm noticing is there's a lot of supply available, a lot of supply on offers, but it's obviously being taken up by buyers. So I've noticed that it may continue today, it may not, but just something to be aware of that as we've kind of pushed higher through here, very clear offers reloading at 35, and as we get up to 45, we're seeing the same thing again. And obviously we've been able to get through what's at the 35s pretty easily, but the offers around the 45s ahead of the 50 strike have not been something that we've been able to push through and go bid yet. But I just want to flag that because that's something I've noticed in the order flow that, if you're not super attentive to order flow, you might miss it. It's not actionable, just an observation. But that's what I'm seeing. Let's move on to the 1x8 and plan for specific price action. Okay, here we are on the 2x4 or 1x8 PNF chart. Let's discuss a couple areas that are important. We kind of already did, but I'll do it again just quickly. We have our MCV POC area right here, which is an area I've been talking about a lot, like the 33, 34 area. Below that, we have these 22 to 25s, which is yesterday's low. And below that, these 15s to 12s. And this gets down to one vola around 10 and 10 half. And then obviously we have our 5.75s. Worth noticing that our 5 3/4 are the prior week's, that's the same price as the prior week's VWAP, which is right here. This is the VWAP anchored from the start of the prior week. Then if we drop lower into that area, we have down to the 92s, which is the next kind of area that I would expect support if we drop into here, but if we don't want to test the gap. And below the 92s, we have the gap. This takes us down to like 1.5 vola down, which is, in my opinion, plenty of range to be aware of today. And then, of course, above we have the 49s to the 50 strike, which is our all-time high region. And then really above it, not is just unknown territory. And really the first area that I'd be interested in up here, or that would be important, would be the 75s, just from an option strike point of view. So let's discuss some things that could happen with price, and let's talk about it in categories of things that could happen today. So what's the first category? Also, I should mention today would be a good day to be aware of delta, because when we are getting pushes higher, especially on the buy side, we're getting pushes. We're like cumulative delta is moving with price when we go higher. So that's something to definitely be aware of today. I'm not I don't talk about delta too much because I think people get too enamored with it being directional, so I try to avoid it. But we are seeing on these pushes higher, delta is moving with price, so I'd be aware of it. I'd be aware if that doesn't happen as well. Okay, so the first possibility I'll look at today is if the MCV POC area here acts as support. If this is support that we can't get through, in which case we're kind of pressing the lows here, seeing some hits into bids. So if those bids stay stiff into the open and we see something like this where we kind of take the overnight low, maybe we get through, and then we see reversion higher, obviously, and then reversion higher, holds this area again, continues, gets to DGPs, takes the overnight high, P settle on the way, prior settle, and this would kind of be the most boring sort of bullish scenario. Maybe we get a pullback into here into DGPs, slightly take the high. We go over this every day. We know what's going on here. If we get this test and this thing happens. And again, once again, we're aware if we ever miss this high and then get the deeper pullback lower that then takes the prior low and then cannot get back up to this high and finds resistance at one of these areas that we talked about. So that would be obviously the most bullish idea, that just kind of like finds support in this MCV POC region. And again, I would be aware, I would be open to similar action happening with a test, as I've kind of said on the prior chart. I'd be open to similar action happening with, instead of holding here, I would be open to similar action on a test into the prior week's VPOC, yesterday's low area, maybe tests into slightly below, all of a sudden gets bid back up, and then we continue. So that could happen also at these 515s or 25s. And then get rid of some of this. It could also happen if we push through, grind, and then through here to the 15s, which could be a test below that either gets the 05 and 3/4 or just misses, but this would again be the area that I'd look for to be tested, maybe push through, then get back above, and then the longs are back on again. So those are the long scenarios that I'm kind of looking at. Holding here or a test and then a hold of one of those levels. Go over that just very quickly again. So I would be open to bullishness on a hold at this area or bullishness on a test and hold of the 25 area or the 15s. These are areas that I'd be looking for potential bullish pushes. How could something else happen? How could bearishness happen? There's two kind of ways that I'd be looking for bearishness to happen today. And let's go over the most frustrating way that bearishness could happen today. The most frustrating way would be if we just kind of push into this area, chop around, go higher, just miss this high, chop, push lower, just kind of do this and start to form just a sloppy trend. Be aware of this. If we form a sloppy trend that never gets the prior high, just kind of takes those are tough because it's hard to play the long or the short. There's really not a lot to do in those unless you occasionally you can play the short on pullbacks, but it's hard because these are all areas that are vulnerable, like I said, at any time to see a push above the prior high, hold, and continue. So those are vulnerable, but that would be a way that bearishness could happen if we just see sort of this just this grinding trend that goes to any one of these areas. if you see something like this, the key target for me would be 25s if you're able to get on the short. And then if it really continues, we have our a naked VPOC down here in the 20 area, and then of course the 15s. And we also know the 575s. These are prices we go over every day because we're in the same range. So that would be one way the bearishness could happen. Another way it could happen would be just with a quick drop through all of these that happens on the open. Be aware of this possibility. Just a quick drop through the open, where all of a sudden we're at yesterday's low. Everyone's like, what's going on? And then we try to push higher. And again, this push higher, it could easily be that test that just continues and holds. Or if it instead can't get above this this MCV POC area, like I said, reprice, tries to pull back, can't really do it so much, and then boom, back to our low, and then gets the 15s. And this would probably be a more aggressive, move. We see a quick drop, can't get out of here, and then just continues to our 15s target. It could also happen even more aggressively with a quick drop that just holds here, gives like no pullback, and then the next thing you know, we're right at the 15s very quickly. That could happen. And again, that could be an area where we see support. On any drops below the century, like if somehow we would drop below here, like I said, we're looking for 92s, which is this area, and then our gap zone below. I would expect support ahead of our gap today. I would expect support ahead of our gap. I could easily be wrong, but that's what I would expect today. So that's what we're looking at in terms of the bullishness areas that we could. I mean, they're basically, my plans are pretty modular. I look at areas from test to test, and what areas to be tested, and I try to be aware of all possibilities at each area. That's why we kind of go over the same ground all the time. But to me, it's valuable because I'm visualizing what may happen, and it's helping me. It helps me then act correctly in the moment without worrying about stuff like whether or not it's going to be a loser. I just act. So those are the two. Those are buckets one, bullish, bucket two, bearish, and then bucket three, of course, is if we just never get too far from this area, which could look like something, again, similar where we just kind of test a little bit lower. We get that low, then we're above. Everyone's like, oh, is this going to be long? Maybe we just miss this high, get through. So again, the same kind of thing. If we stay from 22 to 49 today, then it'll be a trade to scalp for stats. Maybe we can scalp for the overnight stat. Maybe we can scalp for the prior settle in some way, shape, or form. But if we're within here, I wouldn't waste too many stops, in my opinion, if it's not your environment. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up again. I don't know how every day I end up going long. I'm not sure. But I'll get shorter, because if I can get this to be, if I can keep these to be under about 13 to 15 minutes, I'd like to add crude oil, especially in this environment. But that's what I got for you today. I'm going to jump off so that we can all get ready to actually clock some ticks today. I hope everyone is having a great morning in progress. I hope your great morning continues and you have a wonderful day and you're able to improve your trading in some way, shape, or form, and also make someone else smile, because that's the key to true success and happiness. Wish you all the best. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.